We all know that Wisconsin is America's dairyland, but have you ever stopped to wonder exactly why? Why did Wisconsin's earliest residents decide to take care of cows to make a living?
That question and many others are answered in a new book, Creating Dairyland, by author Edward Janus, who joins us today. Welcome to Live at 5.
Thank you.
Let's get to the big question out of the way. Why Wisconsin Dairy Farm? How did it get centralized here?
Okay, so around, let's say, 1850, 60, 70, in a kind of a way, Wisconsin was a train wreck waiting to happen. Wheat was our major crop, and people grew wheat, and they cut the stuff off, and they shipped it all over the place. Nothing came back to the soil. And there's a lot of money to be made in wheat in the early days. The farmers got a little crazy, and they said, oh, man, money. This is all about money now. And the land ran out, wheat prices dropped, and people started leaving Wisconsin. So some very forward-looking people said, we need something to stabilize our land, stabilize our farmers, and teach them again to build for the future rather than ruining the present. Cows. Cows were the answer, and it was almost a religious kind of a thing. People said, cows will change everything. And, you know, they did. It was a huge revolution. Somebody described it as probably one of the greatest economic development projects of history.
Wow.
We went from this sort of crazy era to this very prosperous, what we see today, very prosperous landscape.
How did you get to this question of why the dairyland and ultimately the book?
That's a good question. So, I was introduced to Wisconsin about 1970, and I lived on a dairy farm. Well, this is the best introduction you can get to our people and our landscape, because I was came from out east. I didn't know anything about it, and I just fell in love with it. And as I tell people, dairying was the best job I ever had, which means I really wasn't I wasn't really a dairy farmer, because it's not always fun. But I just fell in love with it. And so about 35 years later, you know, a couple years ago, someone gave me the chance to do some stories about today's dairy farmers. And as I was doing these stories, seeing how they were doing and what they were up to, I said, well, how did this all come about? And that's how I said, so why are there cows in Wisconsin? And how did cows actually create Wisconsin?
And there's some trouble along the way, too. You got milk dumping. I mean, there was protests, you know, prices and all that sort of thing.
Well, that's an interesting picture, but let me go back. Originally, when dairying was first proposed, a lot of men in rural towns rioted. They didn't want to be dairy farmers because it was women's work, and it would mean they had to come back to the barn every night, and they couldn't go into town drinking. So there was a great deal of resistance all along the way. The picture you showed earlier is part of this great attempt to actually make money at dairying. Sometimes it's easy to make money, and sometimes it's pretty hard. And so sometimes people try to sort of unionize dairying.
And it's hard to imagine the state without those farms and those cows grazing.
Right. And you know, it surprises me, maybe it shouldn't, you drive through Dairyland, you're from Wisconsin, and not a lot of people actually know what goes on these farms, let alone why they came into being. So that's what my book is trying to get across.
This is must reading for any resident now or future or in the past.
And it'll be on the driver's license test.
All right. Yes, it will. Great pictures in here, too, and personalized stories. Ed, thanks for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And if you'd like to hear more from Ed, he's speaking and signing books tonight at the Sequoia branch of the Madison Public Library on Tokay Boulevard, 7 o'clock.